"The wedding is off," she whispered, her voice like sandpaper against raw nerves, "but I've decided to marry someone else." I returned home that day, a mere 24 hours before my own wedding, my heart a complex knot of eager anticipation and a faint, unnameable dread. But before my hand even touched the doorknob, a maid's panicked shriek ripped through the elegant silence of the house, freezing me in place. The sound echoed from the living room, drawing me in. There, on the polished hardwood floor, sat Jasper, my half-brother, who had only joined our family 2 years prior. His face was a ghastly white, a faint trickle of blood staining his wrist where he clutched a sharp crafting blade. Beside him, my pristine white wedding suit, meticulously crafted by my mother's loving hands before her passing, lay in a crumpled heap, now marred by a sickening crimson. I stood paralyzed, not just by the sight of the ruined garment, but by its profound significance. That suit wasn't just fabric. It was my mother's final act of love, each stitch imbued with her unwavering affection, the last tangible piece of her I had left. But Alara, my fiancée, the woman I had loved for 2 decades, seemed to see none of it. She rushed past me, her voice trembling with concern. "It's all right, Jasper. It's just a suit." Then, to my utter disbelief, she snatched a lighter from the coffee table and ignited the ruined cloth. The flame greedily devoured the white and red, twisting it into black char, its acrid stench burning not just my nostrils, but my very soul. I lunged forward, beating back the flames, then knelt, cradling the distorted remains, forcing back a guttural cry. When I finally looked up, Alara's eyes held only reproach. "Ethan, must you always push him to the brink?" She then added, her voice softening, "We can postpone the wedding. It's Jasper's well-being that matters most." My world tilted. The wedding, our sacred union, was nothing more than a casual dinner to her. And I, her childhood companion, was less important than a newcomer. Stunned, I turned and walked away, the scent of burning fabric clinging to my clothes like a shroud. But then I remembered. Everything valuable I owned, everything precious from our years together, remained in that house. I returned, knocking, then pounding on the door, but it remained stubbornly shut. Just as I reached for my phone, the door swung open. There stood Jasper, hair damp, a loose robe barely covering him, a triumphant grin plastered across his face as if he were the rightful owner of my home. "Ethan," he chirped, "you finally came back. Oh, I forgot to mention, the lock code changed. Alara thought I'd be lonely, so she had me move in. It's my birthday now, you remember that, right?" His voice was light, but each word was a calculated jab, drilling deeper into my humiliation. I stepped inside. His luggage overflowed in the hallway, and on the coffee table sat a bowl of the exotic fruit he loved, a luxury I'd rarely indulged in. Everything that was once ours now served him. I remember the day Alara bought this villa. She told me it was a sanctuary, a place meant only for us. Now, she appeared from a side room, towel in hand, gently drying Jasper's hair, chiding him affectionately. "Still out here with wet hair? Ethan is waiting to see you." Her words were a subtle reminder, but Jasper's gaze, fixed on me, was overtly smug. Then Alara turned to me, her brow furrowed. "What are you doing just standing there? Go to the kitchen and start dinner." I tried to walk away, but she caught my arm, her voice hardening. "You made Jasper so upset. That's why I brought him here. What's wrong with you cooking him a meal?" I stared into her eyes, my chest burning. He was the one who had invaded my room, touched my mother's legacy. Even if he was ill, she was still supposed to marry me tomorrow. And yet, for him, she had destroyed the last precious memory of my mother. Now she expected me to serve him? Alara faltered, then offered a dismissive smile. "It was just a suit. Can't you wear another one with me?" Her words chilled me to the bone. Before I could react, Jasper interjected, wrapping an arm around her shoulder. "Don't argue with Alara, Ethan. It's all my fault. If you want to hit someone, hit me." He then grabbed my hand and pressed it against his cheek. I recoiled sharply, inadvertently tearing the bandage on his wrist. A fresh trickle of blood appeared. Instantly, Alara shoved me, sending me stumbling backward, hitting the edge of table. She rushed to Jasper, cradling his chin, her eyes filled with anguish over the minor scratch. She led him away, leaving me to stand there alone. In that moment, I understood. From the moment Jasper arrived, my place in her heart had vanished entirely. I retreated to my room, fighting the rage that clawed at my chest, threatening to tear me apart. That night, I tossed and turned, the afternoon's events replaying endlessly, each memory tightening a suffocating grip around my throat. The next morning, I sought out my research advisor, Professor Thorne, at the university. As he looked at me, I asked, my voice deliberate, "Professor, is the overseas research project you mentioned still open for applications?" He seemed surprised, but quickly nodded, patting my shoulder. "Of course, Ethan. I'm glad you've finally come around. This is where you belong." I completed the application immediately. When he asked when I planned to leave, I simply said, 5 days from now. Even I couldn't believe the speed of my decision. It was the day before our scheduled wedding. Professor Thorne glanced at my bandaged hand, sighed, but asked no further questions. Later that evening, returning to the house, I found Alara waiting. On the sofa, a brand-new suit, impeccably wrapped, lay pristine. She offered a smile, as if nothing had happened. "I was a little upset yesterday and accidentally damaged your suit, but we can't have a wedding without one, so I bought you a new one. Does it fit?" Her tone was airy, an unspoken invitation to forget everything. I looked at the luxurious garment, a heavy weight settling in my heart. She still didn't understand, or perhaps she pretended not to. My deepest wound wasn't the loss of a suit, but her callous disregard for my mother's last memento. Seeing my silence, she assumed I had relented. A flicker of triumph, almost imperceptible, danced in her eyes. Then, as if remembering something, she said, "Jasper isn't very healthy, and his studies have fallen behind." She paused. "I heard your competition is about to conclude. Why don't you let Jasper take your place? He needs this opportunity more." I froze. Her words struck me like blocks of ice, and sweat beaded on my palms. I forced myself to speak, keeping my voice steady. "Are you asking me to give him the credit for my hard work?" She smiled thinly. "I'm a project investor. If you don't agree, I'll withdraw funding immediately." The pieces clicked into place. It had all been planned. From the moment she poured money into my project, it wasn't out of belief in me, but to pave the way for Jasper. I clenched my jaw, knowing I couldn't fight her. This wasn't just my sweat, but the dedication of my entire team. If I refused, everyone would suffer. Finally, I could only nod, my voice hoarse. "All right, I agree." She smiled, turning to leave, her parting words like a final nail in my coffin. "If you had been so compliant from the start, none of this would have happened." As the door closed, I stood there for a long time, feeling as though the last vestiges of my dignity had been stripped away. I began to pack my room. In another, smaller room, I carefully stored away all the gifts she had ever given me, from the paper stars inscribed with declarations of love to the photographs of every place we'd visited. Recalling those trips, her face beside me when my mother died, hot tears streamed down my face, unbidden. My phone buzzed. A video message from Jasper. In the frame, he held Alara's hand, both looking up at a sky ablaze with fireworks. Below the video, a text read, "Wish you were here. You're missing out." Then on his social media, a new photo, hands clasped together with the caption, "Holding hands, growing old together." I simply tapped the like button, then walked out to the yard. Before me, a pile of treasured mementos. I set them alight. The flames licked at each photograph, each scrap of paper, each gift, just as they had consumed my wedding suit. For the remaining 5 days, I didn't see Alara, but through Jasper's posts, I knew they were at fireworks displays, by the ocean, at the aquarium. I understood it was all a deliberate show for me. I chose silence, continuing to pack. With 3 days left, I met my friends one last time. When I told them I was leaving the country, they were all stunned. Leo walked over, slung an arm around my shoulder, his voice serious. "But you and Alara are getting married, aren't you? What happened? Is she treating you badly?" His words, and the warm concern in everyone's eyes soothed a part of my aching heart. It had been a long time since I felt such genuine care. We drank late. When I went to wash my face and returned, I ran into Jasper in the hallway. He feigned surprise. What a coincidence! Alara's success party. You're coming too. Without waiting for my response, he pulled me into a private room. The moment I entered, the entire room fell silent. Alara looked at me, her brow furrowed. Haven't been home for a few days, so now you're spying on me? I replied calmly. I just ran into him, and he pulled me in. She laughed coldly. Jasper just wanted to share his joy. Why the attitude? I let out a bitter laugh. Sharing joy? Or stealing my hard work? The atmosphere immediately tensed. Someone spoke up, trying to smooth things over. Ms. Alara, don't mind him. Today is Mr. Jasper's celebration. Don't let him ruin the mood. The conversation quickly shifted, showering praise on Jasper and Alara. No one mentioned me, despite the award bearing the imprint of my effort. Jasper looked at me, a victorious smirk on his face. Alara approached, her voice icy. Aren't you going to congratulate Jasper? I offered a slight smile, raising my glass. Congratulations. Winning an award in just 3 days, truly impressive. With abundant resources, awards are naturally easy to come by. With that, I set my glass down with a sharp click, turned, and walked out. Outside, the cold rain lashed at my face. I walked straight ahead, not looking back, my heart heavy as if I had finally shed something long decayed. The rain intensified, but I kept walking, letting my clothes get soaked, the cold seeping deep into my skin. Streetlights cast long shadows on the wet pavement, and I felt like I was walking through a dark abyss with no end in sight. A single question echoed in my mind, over and over. What did I do to deserve this? Suddenly, an umbrella appeared above my head. I looked up, meeting Alara's complicated gaze. She stood so close I could hear her breathing mingle with the rain. Ethan, she said, her voice low, tinged with an inexplicable reproach. I told you before, your kindness, people take for granted. I looked at her, then burst into laughter, my mirth echoing louder and louder in the dark night. Why do you have to say that? Wasn't all of this caused by you? Her face immediately turned as cold as ice. This is a debt you owe Jasper. If you hadn't bullied and isolated him in college, he wouldn't be like this now. I froze. Everything clicked into place. So this was the reason for her change. After 2 decades of being childhood sweethearts, she had chosen to believe the words of someone who had only just returned, rather than me. I felt only an empty void in my chest, not even the strength left to explain. I managed a bitter laugh, and then everything went black. When I awoke, it was morning. On the table, a steaming cup of coffee and a note from her. She had to leave for a business trip for a few days, but would be back before the wedding. I looked at the coffee cup, a hollow feeling rising within me. For 20 years, she knew I was allergic to coffee. Now she had forgotten. Perhaps what she called care had long since vanished. I contacted my overseas connections, sending my luggage ahead, and asked them to investigate the event from years ago. I drafted an email scheduled to send all the evidence to her precisely on our wedding day. Everything was set. It was the day before the wedding. I held a bouquet, intending to visit my mother's grave. Unexpectedly, Alara returned early and found me about to leave. When I mentioned visiting my mother, she offered to accompany me. As her car pulled up to the cemetery gates, her phone rang. Jasper's voice on the other end was unclear, but her expression changed instantly. She unbuckled her seatbelt. You go home and get ready for the wedding. I won't be back tonight. Then she drove off, leaving me standing there. Watching her car disappear, I whispered silently, Alara, goodbye, and never again. The next day, I stepped onto foreign soil. My phone buzzed with a familiar, now alien number. I almost hung up but answered. Her voice was urgent. Ethan, the wedding is about to begin. Where are you? If you're not here in 10 minutes, the wedding is off. I remained silent. She seemed to lower her voice, pleading. I prepared a new suit for you. Are you still angry about anything? All the suppressed grievances welled up, stinging my eyes. I replied slowly, it's not just about the suit. It's about forgotten promises, altered wedding details, the times I was abandoned. All of it has drained my affection for you. A pause. Then her voice grew sharp. Do you have to choose today to cause trouble? When will you grow up? Be as mature as Jasper. Hearing that, I chuckled softly. Then go marry Jasper. Goodbye and never again. I ended the call, feeling as though a great stone had been lifted from my chest. Maya, a new colleague, glanced at me in the rearview mirror, her eyes holding a trace of sympathy. Your girlfriend really doesn't know what she's doing. I didn't reply, simply gazed out the window. Exactly at noon, my scheduled email was sent. I removed my SIM card, broke it, and tossed it into a trash bin. From that moment, she was entirely in the past. When I messaged Professor Thorne and my friend with my new number, Leo video called me. He laughed as he recounted the day. You didn't show up at the wedding today. Alara was furious, almost tore the venue apart. Jasper, in a groom's suit, tried to take your place, but she pushed him away. She even asked if you deliberately bullied Jasper. It's ridiculous. I felt a slight surprise. I hadn't expected her to believe me this time, but it was too late. Before hanging up, I told Leo to avoid Alara if she tried to find me. He immediately agreed. I sat, watching the lights outside my window, exhaling slowly, knowing this love story had closed and a new life awaited. 2 days later, emerging from the lab, I found Alara standing directly outside. Her face was gaunt and dusty, her eyes red-rimmed, fixed on me as if seeking an explanation. Ethan, how can you be so cruel? Did you think I wouldn't find you if you ran? Her voice was hoarse, laced with accusation. Maya stepped out from the lab, positioning herself directly in front of me, her gaze assessing. Excuse me, who are you? The question startled Alara. Her eyes inadvertently dropped to my wrist, while my hand and Maya's were still lightly touching. A flicker of shock crossed her face, then her voice caught. I'm his fiancé. The two words, fiancé, were uttered with a bitter edge, as if to remind me that the one who had recently rejected marriage now claimed the title herself. I subtly signaled to Maya that I was all right, then said softly, Maya, please, let me talk to her alone. Once we were alone, she immediately challenged me. Who is she? Is she why you didn't marry me? How long have you known each other? I shook my head slightly, placing the coffee cup I held onto a nearby table. Don't cause trouble, Alara. You were the one who changed your heart first. Now you suspect me because of someone else? Her eyes wavered, her voice softening. Ethan, I didn't mean it like that. I was just so anxious. Please don't be angry. The way she spoke my name pierced my heart. Since Jasper's appearance, that intimacy had vanished, replaced by a cold distance. I took a deep breath. If there's nothing else, let's not meet again from now on. She unexpectedly gripped my hand, tears falling. I know I was wrong. I've thrown out all of Jasper's things. I've added your name back to the competition entry. I even had your mother's suit repaired. Please give me another chance. She held out her phone, showing me a picture. I looked at the image, memories of my mother flooding back. Back then, Alara had promised my mother she would take care of me for life. My mother had believed her, sewing that suit with her own hands. But a suit could be mended. The gash in my heart could not. I gently removed her hand, my gaze unwavering. I gave you many chances. You chose to push me away, step by step. Now, returning is impossible. I turned my back, leaving her sobs behind me. The next day, Professor Thorne unexpectedly announced that a company had just invested tens of millions more into our project. That evening, there would be a product demonstration and a welcome party for me. I had intended to refuse, but ultimately nodded. When I walked into the restaurant, I was unsurprised to see Alara. She was always like this. Anything I wanted, she would find a way to provide. But everything had changed since Jasper arrived. Disregarding everyone's stares, she sat next to me and whispered, Ethan, I won't interfere with your project again this time. I didn't reply, simply picked up my chopsticks to eat. She continuously added food to my bowl, as if doing so could make up for everything. Looking at the bowl piled high with seafood, I put down my chopsticks. I'm allergic to seafood. Her face froze. Then she hastily took my bowl and exchanged it for another. Her action drew the attention of the entire table. Feeling awkward, I stood up, apologized, and walked out. The cold wind made me shiver slightly, and a jacket was draped over my shoulders from behind. She had followed me, her eyes filled with both remorse and hope. I've just been so tired lately, I completely forgot. I looked at the dark circles under her eyes, my emotions a jumbled mess, but I was determined to keep my distance. Her phone rang. I gestured for her to answer. Jasper's choked sobs came from the other end. "Elara, where are you? Why don't you care about me anymore?" Her face immediately hardened. "I told you clearly, the only person I love is Ethan. You always interfere and cause trouble." I held my breath, realizing that she had not only removed Jasper's name from the project, but had also contacted the university to expel him. And with her family's considerable influence withdrawn, and Jasper's reckless business dealings now exposed without protection, his family's company quickly crumbled, losing contracts and falling into distress. She seemed to say all this deliberately, hoping for a reaction from me. But I merely returned her jacket. These things were always rightfully mine. Now I don't need them. Perhaps that conversation had swayed her, because in the following days, she didn't seek me out. I thought I had found peace, but one afternoon, Jasper unexpectedly appeared at the lab. He walked in with an innocent expression, but when we were alone, the smile vanished. "Ethan, I hate you. I've known about you since I was a child. Why were you loved, while I was just a bastard living in the shadows?" He admitted that from his very first day back, he had deliberately approached Elara. All the stories about being bullied and suffering from depression were fabricated by him, and to his surprise, she had believed him. Seeing her grow cold towards me had filled him with satisfaction. Then he confessed, "Elara only came back to the city because I faked a suicide attempt with sleeping pills to keep her." I replied calmly, "I wish you both happiness." A flicker of surprise crossed his face, but before he could react, Elara appeared. She walked straight past me, stopping in front of Jasper, her voice cold. "Do you still have the nerve to sit here?" Jasper pulled out his phone, seeing a barrage of messages from his father. "The family business is bankrupt. He's wanted by the authorities." His face went white, his voice trembling. "What do you mean?" Elara offered a faint, bitter smile. "I only agreed to marry you to appease your father. Did you really take sleeping pills? You know the truth better than I do." I watched silently as Jasper broke down, begging, but she remained unmoved. When she turned to me and asked, "Did he do anything to you?" I merely shook my head, then stood up and walked away, leaving Jasper's cries echoing behind me. After that meeting, Elara seemed determined to erase our shared past. Every day, she appeared outside the lab, waiting for me to finish work. Sometimes, citing collaboration discussions, she would send pastries to the whole team. Other times, she'd invent excuses to inquire about the project's progress. Her persistence led my colleagues to believe our relationship was mending. But I knew the truth. That distance could not be bridged by a few belated gestures of care. Time passed quickly, and the project entered its final stages. A week after submitting our results, we received news of winning the award. The entire team erupted in cheers. Elara, as the investor, immediately invited everyone to the city's most luxurious restaurant to celebrate. I hadn't wanted to attend, but not wanting to spoil the mood, I went. The party was lively, filled with laughter and conversation. After a few drinks, I found an excuse to step out onto the balcony for some fresh air. Soon after, Elara joined me, holding a glass of wine, her eyes sparkling with the reflection of the city lights. I looked at her for a moment, then spoke directly. "You don't owe me anything anymore. There's no need to waste your time on me. Start your own new life." She was silent for a long time, then asked slowly, "Did you truly love me back then?" Perhaps it was the alcohol, but I answered simply, "Of course." For a brief moment, it felt as though we were back in our happy days. She smiled faintly, closing her eyes, saying that knowing that answer was enough. Then, she admitted she hadn't been strong enough to hold on to me. And now, seeing me doing well, she would choose to let go. "Can we be friends in the future?" I looked at her face, and all the old memories flooded back, but the wounds were too deep, too permanent to erase. I shook my head. No, we can't go back, and we can't pretend nothing ever happened. At the end of the party, she offered to drive me home. The night streets were quiet, only the yellow glow of streetlights stretching out. I sat in the passenger seat, gazing out the window, an unusual calm settling over me. But that tranquility was shattered when, from an upcoming intersection, a car sped towards us at terrifying speed. It all happened in a matter of seconds. Alara swerved the steering wheel, intentionally taking the brunt of the impact on her side. The screech of metal, a deafening crash, and the world spun. In the hazy moments before losing consciousness, I caught a glimpse of Jasper's contorted face behind the wheel of that other car. When I opened my eyes, the stark white ceiling of a hospital room greeted me. Maya sat by my bedside, her voice soft. "You're awake?" Jasper was arrested on the spot and extradited. "You and Alara were both brought here, but her injuries are more severe. She just moved out of the ICU. Her family has been notified." I had expected Alara's parents to blame me for her accident. Instead, her mother embraced me tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Our daughter is at fault, not you, son. Such a beautiful love, and she caused you so much pain." Hearing those words, I couldn't help but weep in her arms. She gently patted my back, comforting me like a child. "Don't worry. Once she recovers, we'll take her away, and she won't bother you anymore." No one expected that when she awoke, Alara had lost her memory. She had forgotten everything related to me. I didn't know how to feel, but deep down I thought perhaps this was the best outcome for both of us. The following weeks, the pressure in the lab eased. I often visited the hospital, standing outside her door, watching her chat cheerfully with the nurses, no trace of the past's weary conflicts. The accident Jasper caused was aimed at me, and when he lost everything, he chose the most desperate way to retaliate. The day her mother came to take her overseas, I stood at a distance, far enough not to be noticed. But as if sensing me, she turned her head. Our eyes met through the glass, a flicker of bewilderment in hers. No words were exchanged, but I saw her eyes well up, as if wanting to etch my image into her memory. I turned and walked away, not looking back. In the sky, a plane carved a long contrail, carrying her out of my life. This time, it was forever. In the days after Alara left, my life slowly returned to its old rhythm. No more sudden messages, no unexpected calls, no one waiting outside the lab. I finally felt a true sense of calm. Work still occupied most of my time, but it no longer felt as heavy. I started sleeping deeper, waking without the oppressive weight in my chest. Occasionally, at the end of the day, I would recall her gaze at the airport. That look carried no resentment, nor the familiar pride, only an ellipsis, a sentence left unfinished. But I knew if I had turned back then, everything would have reverted to the same destructive path. Some relationships, with one glance back, crumble all self-protective boundaries. The lab quickly embarked on a new project, and I poured all my energy into my work. Maya often stayed late with me to finalize reports, sometimes even buying coffee and snacks for the entire team. Her presence was quiet yet steadfast, like a peaceful haven amidst the past chaos. Still, I couldn't deny that sometimes, in moments of busy solitude, memories of our 20-plus years as childhood sweethearts resurfaced. I remembered Alara holding my hand, running through the rain, her clumsy efforts at preparing dinner, even counting stars with me on the rooftop. It had all been so real, but now it existed only in memory. One evening, as I was preparing to leave the lab, Professor Thorne called me back. He said the partners wanted to invite our project team to their headquarters to present our research results and hoped I would lead the presentation. I agreed without hesitation. This was an opportunity one had once let slip away, and this time I wouldn't let anything stop me. The trip went smoothly. After the presentation, I received many new collaboration offers. At the subsequent reception, while I was chatting with some company representatives, my phone rang persistently. It was an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but then a text message appeared. "I'm Alara's mother. There's something I need to tell you." I excused myself to call her back immediately. Her voice was slightly shaky but calm. "Ethan, are you doing well these days? Alara has started remembering some things. She asks about you a lot, but we just tell her you're busy with work. Would you like to see her?" I was speechless. A part of me wanted to refuse instantly, but another part was stirred, not by hope of rekindling, but by a desire to finally close a door that had never truly latched shut. I arranged to meet her a few days after my return. On the day of our reunion, Alara sat in a small cafe. The afternoon light softened her face, devoid of its usual sharp edges. When she saw me, she paused, as if trying to piece together fragments of memory. "You're Ethan." I nodded, pulling up a chair opposite her. We spoke slowly. She recounted the gaps in her memory, the confusing shards of me that she couldn't comprehend. Occasionally, she smiled when I shared an old story, but even in that smile, there was a hint of unfamiliarity. I realized the distance between us now wasn't just the past hurts, but also the time and choices that had led us down separate paths. As we parted, she looked at me for a long time. "Perhaps we won't meet again." I smiled faintly. "Then I wish you well." She nodded, her eyes holding something that was both relief and regret. That evening, I walked along a familiar street, the wind carrying the damp scent of impending rain. For the first time in months, I felt truly capable of letting everything go. No more anger, no more lingering regret, just a peaceful emptiness. I understood that love doesn't always end in reconciliation. Sometimes, the best thing we can do for each other is to walk away so that each can find their own path. And for me, that path had begun the moment I turned my back at the airport. After the plane carrying Alara disappeared from sight, and following that last meeting, I thought everything had truly closed. Work swept me into a new cycle. Projects flowed one after another, leaving me little time for excessive reflection. Yet, news of Alara occasionally reached me through friends or the media. She had returned to fashion design, frequently appearing at events. But the eyes in those photos seemed to have lost their former brilliance. One weekend evening, while tidying documents in my office, I received a thick envelope. There was no sender's address, just my name on the front. Inside were old photographs, us together at a summer festival, standing by the river watching fireworks, sitting under a cherry blossom tree, hands clasped tightly. All were memories from years ago, a time when she and I believed having each other was enough. Tucked between the photos was a short letter, in her familiar, graceful handwriting. "I don't remember everything, but every time I see you in my memories, I'm always smiling. Thank you for once being there." I sat quietly for a long time, my fingers tracing the lines of her script. There were no pleas, no apologies, just a gentle acknowledgement of the time that had passed. I didn't reply, but the letter remained in my desk drawer, a part of my memory I didn't want to erase. A few months later, I coincidentally met Alara's mother at a charity conference. She approached me warmly, taking my hand. After a few polite inquiries, she whispered, "Alara is moving abroad to settle down. She said she wants to try living somewhere entirely new, to start fresh. If you can, please meet her one last time." I wasn't sure I should agree, but her sincere eyes made it impossible to refuse. We arranged to meet at a small cafe nestled deep in a quiet street. When I arrived, she was already there, her long hair softly draped, the light filtering through the window highlighting her delicate face. We talked about many things, from her upcoming plans to my current work. Neither of us mentioned the past, as if it were an unspoken agreement. Mid-conversation, she unexpectedly handed me a small box. "I found this in an old drawer. I think it belongs to you." I opened it. Inside was the silver watch I had given her for her 20th birthday. I had thought it was lost or discarded long ago. The hands of the watch had stopped, but its surface was still bright, only lightly scratched at the rim. I kept it because it reminded me that there was once someone who saw me as their only one. Her voice was soft but clear, without tremor, without a hint of clinginess. I didn't refuse, simply nodded and accepted it. In that moment, I realized that between us, there was no longer any debt, no resentment, No lingering hope, only the calm acceptance of two people who had stepped out of an important chapter of life. Before leaving the cafe, she stood up and smiled. "I wish you happiness." This time, her smile hid nothing, nor was it pretense. I responded with a nod, watching her figure disappear around the bend. That evening, I brought the watch home, placing it on my desk. The hands remained frozen at 11:47, marking a moment suspended in the past. I had no intention of repairing it, nor of hiding it away. It would stay there as a reminder of what once was and what was lost, so I wouldn't forget how far I had come since the day I first walked away from that relationship. Though many unknown paths still lay ahead, I felt lighthearted. What needed to be said had been said. What needed to be repaid had been repaid. And I knew that from now on, both Alara and I would never look back. Weeks after our final meeting, I received news that Alara had left the city. Her flight had taken her to a distant country. No one knew exactly where she would live, only that she had sold her apartment, moved all necessary belongings, and erased all familiar contact information. I heard the news from her mother, whose voice was light, yet held a quiet sadness. She wants to start over, and this time, we will respect her choice. That evening, I walked along the riverside path, where we once sat for hours without needing to speak. The wind carried the damp scent of mist, and the rippling waves reflected the yellow streetlights. Everything seemed unchanged, except that the person who once sat beside me was no longer there. I didn't know if she, across the ocean, was thinking of me, but I knew for certain that both of us had moved on to a different chapter of our lives. Work continued to consume me. New projects opened up significant collaboration opportunities. I had to travel constantly between cities. Each time I passed through an airport, the announcements for international flights would involuntarily bring back the image of the plane leaving the runway, carrying away the woman I had once loved most. But the feeling now wasn't one of emptiness, but like watching a familiar movie whose every scene I knew by heart, only smiling at the beautiful parts. One late autumn afternoon, while in a meeting with partners, I received an email with no subject line from an unfamiliar address. It contained only a single photograph of a vast blue sea and a single line of text. "It's very peaceful here." It wasn't signed, but I knew it was her. I didn't reply, nor did I delete it. The photo remained in my inbox, a message needing no response. In the years that followed, I gradually heard less about her. Occasionally, through mutual friends, I learned she had opened a small boutique, living a simple and discreet life. They said she smiled often, her smile gentler and softer than before. Hearing this, I simply remained silent. Some things don't need to be seen to be known as true. One late evening, after finishing a report, I took the silver watch from my desk drawer. The lamplight reflected on its aged face, the hands still frozen at 11:47. I placed it on my wrist, letting its silence rest there like a part of my memory. Time outside continued to flow, but for me, what had passed would forever be frozen in that moment. Not for regret, nor for remorse, but simply to remember that there had once been a love deep enough to help me grow. Outside the window, the street was empty, the wind carrying the first chill of winter. I closed my laptop, turned off the light, and left the office. Life was still waiting for me ahead, with new plans, new aspirations, and new relationships. I knew that no matter how long the road ahead, I would not turn back. Somewhere, under a distant sky, perhaps she, too, was walking forward, carrying a piece of old memory, but always facing the future. And I believe that this was the most complete way for us to exist in each other's lives, even if we no longer walk side by side.